Welcome to Storytime with Ald. This week's story is Abdication. It comes from the book Culmination by Madison. And let's begin. 12 million years after the creation of Emphalis. Far south of Zephyr, 500 miles from the nearest elvish city or town, in a desolate wasteland where blood and gore stained the ground, thousands of combatants, their unyielding will to survive shining through, faced off against the very creator of their universe in a harrowing and desperate struggle. Unbeknownst to all, Creary, the creator of Emphalis, had succumbed to corruption and an insatiable desire to annihilate his creations. He had transformed into a shadow of his former self, Vastator. Now he stood before his creations, the three incarnations, the seven gods and goddesses, Merlin the last primordial, Jarek Kuretsu, and the shadow without a name. Only 13 remained of all who had confronted him at the inception of this battle. Their survival, a beacon of hope in the face of overwhelming odds, was a testament to their unyielding will to survive and a determination that underscored the gravity of the situation. Children, behold the malevolence that saturates this realm. Was Hakiru not forsaken by his offspring, the first of many abominations to plague this world? Was the shadow not cursed by the legacy of the previous death, a legacy that left him a mere specter without a name? Merlin, did you not witness these atrocities and suffer a betrayal of your own? Were you not compelled to exist by another's decree, forsaking your love and dreams for a being whose actions caused me to become as I am? Jarek, having witnessed the horrors of the elvish human conflict, can you honestly advocate for the continuation of this world? As its creator, should I not obliterate the entire tapestry and commence anew? Keina, the wisest of my progeny, can you not discern that this is the essence of balance? This is the essence by which you came to be? The very thing which gave you shape and form? Vastator's many eyes blinked as he spoke, though at different and varying times, except for the large ones on his chest, which seemed never to blink. This is not balance, but chaos, and you are nothing more than an abomination that has housed itself in the shell of my former father. You cannot sway me with your words, Vastator, because your actions betray you. Your obsession with devastation has dulled, if not removed, your ability to create. You are no longer a creator, but a devastator. You may have decimated and killed across the dimensions, but it stops at Emphalis. We cannot kill you, as that may very well unmake us all, but we can outwit you, imprison you, and then seal you away. Keina's words, heavy with the weight of the world, echoed around the body-laden battlefield, each syllable a testament to the gravity of her decision. She had devised a cunning plan against all odds, and with all their hope to outsmart their enemy and ensure their survival. The cataclysm, a barrier spell erected by Merlin 4 million years earlier, would serve as a prison for as much of Vastator's energy as they could seal, hoping that the remains would either dissipate harmlessly without a body or exist in perpetuity, floating on the winds and energies of Emphalis. Merlin agreed with this course of action and would act as the guardian of the energy, while throughout the battle the gods and goddesses focused on preparing the spell for when Vastator was weakened. Vastator charged at Keina, hoping that severing the figurehead would make the figure crumble. The incarnations of death and destruction blocked the blows, sliding back under the force of Vastator's assault. Raw energy surged through destruction as he unleashed a beam of it straight at Vastator, who was pushed back by the blast. Keep pushing, Death said, placing his hand on Destruction's left shoulder and channeling his energy into him. As he did this, the blast of energy doubled, completely engulfing Vastator in its stream. Then came the Nameless One, tendrils of shadow trailing behind him as he glided toward Vastator, who was now struggling with the blast, slowly but surely making his way toward death, destruction, and Keina. The tendrils of shadow wrapped around Vastator's limbs, keeping him contained in the center of the blast. Then came Merlin from the sky, pink wings spread wide as he raised his crescent moon staff above his head. Lightning crackled to life above him, then thunder rolled as a bolt crashed into Vastator's head. The embodiment of their ending screamed in agony, regretting now that his body could feel pain at all. Merlin continued his onslaught of spells, keeping one eye trained on the gods and goddesses, their unity evident in their shared goal of preparing the spell to seal Vastator away. In this moment, their unity was their strength, a bond that could not be broken. This battle had lasted far too long, not just days or weeks, but months and years. Merlin could feel his energy draining down to its last dregs. He knew that soon he would be unable to assist any longer, and wondered if Vastator was fatigued in any sense of the word. A shout from Jarek broke his train of thought as Vastator ascended towards him. Having finally broken free from the torrent of energy from death and destruction by killing the latter with the shard of rock, and the grip of the Nameless One's tendrils, Merlin sprung in the air to his left and brought his staff around in a sweeping arc, which Vastator easily avoided. Merlin grasped wildly at the god he had viewed as a grandfather, as the latter's large hand wrapped around his throat and snapped it, severing Merlin's spinal cord. Merlin's body erupted into pink feathers, obscuring Vastator's vision. The real Merlin then set his plan in motion, directing his energy into the feathers, which began to swirl around Vastator. The Nameless One and Destiny followed suit, the Shadow's tendrils again wrapping around Vastator's limbs. Simultaneously, Destiny's ethereal chains burst forth from the earth, pulling Vastator down into the complex circular structure that Terra had constructed, which served as the focal point for the spell Keina and her siblings would cast. Merlin's vision began to blur as his energy reached its lowest point, where even a being like him could die. He summoned his willpower in place of energy. He continued to weave his spell, using the magic contained within his feathers to pacify Vastator long enough for Keina and her siblings to complete the task of sealing him. The gods and goddesses began taking their positions around the circle: Lux, light; Tenebris, dark; Infernus, fire; Aqua, water; Eris, wind; and Terra, earth, with Keina joining at the center where Vastator was now chained and bound. Beams of elemental energy shot from the gods and goddesses who formed the circle within the structure, converging on Keina and Vastator, who was, due to Merlin's spell, temporarily entranced by the appearance of the energy. Waves of energy so immense that Merlin feared the planet would shake apart began to flow from Vastator into Keina, causing her to glow with an unusual light. Her golden brown hair transformed not to the color of fire, but into fire itself. Her eyes became water, her skin the earth, and the beating of her heart the wind. It was a terrible sight to behold, yet Merlin remained perched at the edge of the structure, careful not to avert his gaze from what was about to unfold. In all his years he had never witnessed, nor would he ever again, something like this, a god willing to sacrifice their own life to save that of a lesser being. Merlin understood that even if there had only been one organism in the entire planet, Keina would still have chosen the path she took today, a realization that made him proud she had been his goddess, and confident that Keina could contain Vastator long enough to seal him in the cataclysm. The now empty husk of Vastator slumped within the chains of destiny, and the Nameless One released his tendrils, drawing them back to him. With the spell completed, Terra lowered the structure back into the earth, dragging the bodies of their fallen comrades, the people who had fought for Emphalis against its creator. Except for the body of the incarnation of destruction, Aqua raised her hand and rain fell from the ground, a physical representation of the grief that permeated the air. Merlin collapsed to the ground, more drained than he'd ever been. He was sure it would take him millennia to recover the energy he had spent in battle, the hardest he had fought since the Angel-Demon War. But now Merlin would get to retire to the cataclysm, awaiting the duty he had been assigned. This had been his penultimate battle, and his reward would no longer involve himself physically in conflicts. The next time he fought, it would be for him alone. The next time he fought would be his final fight. I can teleport us to the cataclysm, but I can only take my siblings and Merlin without relying on Vastator's power. Death, I ask that you take Vastator's husk and bury it far east in Selena. Destiny, I ask that you take the body of destruction with you to the Isle of Incarnations. Shade, a boat is docked northeast of here. Take it, deliver death to Selena. Then continue north by sea until you reach your lands. Like Merlin, the time has not yet come for you to pass on, but like Merlin, your fate is tied to the one he waits for. Await Merlin to contact you, and you will be free of your curse. Jarek Karakuto, by constantly striving to follow in the footsteps of your forebears, you have repeatedly fallen to their folly, allowing wars to break out across Emphalis under your watch and care. When Iasel is finished his training, you will give him the throne and go into exile on Chemos. And with that, Keina, her siblings, and Merlin vanished into thin air. Merlin collapsed onto the familiar grass of the cataclysm, exhausted yet ecstatic to have made it home alive. Keina stood sternly before the fallen angel, sympathetic to his fatigue but unable to grant him time to recuperate. They had delivered the other gods and goddesses to their pocket dimension, leaving only the two of them to finalize the sealing of Vastator. He's already trying to fight his way out, Merlin, Keina screamed. A panicked look crossed her face, and energy began to swirl wildly around her. Strange markings appeared on her body, similar to the godly script he had seen when he served the gods in their dimension. Her right eye transformed from its usual golden color to completely black with a white pupil, the same as the eye Vastator had possessed. Merlin tried to stand but collapsed back to the ground, his staff falling just in front of his hands. However, he noticed Takeru's red feather was missing. Had he lost it in the earlier battle? It's just as I saw when I used Destiny's power all those ages ago, came a familiar voice from behind Merlin. He turned his head as best he could in disbelief. Behind him, though composed entirely of energy, was the vision of his best friend and king, Hikiro Kirikutsu. His black hair blew slightly in the wind, and his white bangs did little to hide the blue eyes they tried to cover. He looked like the epitome of all the heroes he had inspired, a true king and warrior. When I clashed with my sons, I used my power of subjugation to force destiny to show me Emphalis' future depending on my course of action. I saw then that my creation of Indratus would eventually lead to Vastator, so I'm here to help cement the course of the future. Hikiro's remnant rushed towards Keina, and when it reached her, he clasped her firmly by the shoulders and spoke softly to her. My goddess, it is time to restore balance to the world. As Hikiro's remnant activated his divine gift of balance, the energy around Keina calmed. The writing disappeared, and her right eye returned to normal. Keina looked up at Hikiro's remnant, tears streaming from her golden eyes as she witnessed what remained of Andreas' first king. Weep not for me, Keina. This is a world of cause and effect, and this is the effect of what I have caused. I have no time for, nor need for, pity. I am here to assist in the way that I saw would be necessary, and that is all. Hikiro Kirikutsu has been dead for untold years. I am merely a collection of his energy, here to accomplish a set task. What did Hikiro see that day? Asked Merlin, curious to learn what else awaited him. He still had not encountered the child whom Hikiro had once prophesied and wondered if it might somehow be connected to the day's events. Hikiro looked Merlin in the eye and said, Keina will die today after sealing most of Vastator's energy inside the cataclysm. Only you and the gods and goddesses will remember that this happened. The others will go about their assigned duties, but they will believe that you all fought rampaging destruction, and death will believe he is transporting your corpse. The Nameless One will think your corpse is a fake, but will not push the issue. Keina will create two swords, a sentient sword with a neutron star for a core, which will change form based on the energy and will of its user. This sword will also bear my gifts of light, darkness, and balance to my heir, returning the morality gifts I received from the three gods to my descendants. The divine beasts are still tied to the throne of Andreas, but the demonic beast will serve only the angel with the morality gifts. The second sword will be embedded with an eye of Vastator, which will have the power to sever the effects of anyone it slashes. Where am I supposed to get an eye of Vastator now? Death has taken the husk with him to Keina, and I cannot contain Vastator long enough to make another round trip, Keina asked, looking at Hikiro, who was still staring at Merlin unknowingly. Yes, I grabbed one of Vastator's eyes. I figured it would come in handy, and I was right. I want to point out, Merlin said as he pulled the eye from his shirt and tossed it to Hiro's remnant, who caught it quickly. Keina focused intensely, using Hikaru's energy instead of her own to avoid accidentally releasing Vastator. As he examined them more closely, the two swords sprang forth between the three of them, just as Hikaru had described. The diamond-like blade of the Sakyo glowed in the twilight, with the keychain of a face at the bottom of the sword illuminated by a smiling visage. In contrast, the Kaya appeared dark and menacing, its very presence exuding a sense of foreboding. The eye of Vastator, embedded in its hilt, darted round wildly before glaring at Merlin, who recoiled in fear. When Hikiro was satisfied that the swords met the specifications he had observed while using Destiny's power, approximately 2 minutes later, he began to assist Keina in channeling Vastator's energy into the crystal pillar that had formed when Hikiro and Destruction had perished all those years ago. Once this task was completed, Hikiro's remaining energy returned to his feather. Bidding farewell to Merlin for the last time. Using the last of her strength before departing from this world and erasing most of her own memory, the goddess of balance, Keina, sealed the keys to Vastator in a pocket dimension, accessible only to those chosen by the swords within. For the next million years, Merlin watched over the creator of Emphalis and the keys that bound his seal, patiently waiting for the child who would complete what Hikiro had set in motion, the child destined to fulfill a fate paid for by Hikiro's life and solidified by Keina's death. Hey, it's great having you here today, and we hope you come back for our next episode where we will go on to the next short story from this exciting adventure. This is Ald, and look, be blessed and be a blessing.